I'm Amanda Wilson, 28, sitting at our family's Sunday dinner when my world shattered. My sister Lauren had unexpectedly returned from London, bringing an atmosphere thicker than the beef stew steaming on our plates. Between bites of Mom's homemade bread, Lauren's eyes gleamed with something I couldn't name. Then she said it, "You have 3 days to leave the house." Mom and Dad just watched, silent partners in my ambush. The home I'd grown up in, the one I'd been taking care of, suddenly wasn't mine anymore. If you're watching this from your family home, hit that like button and subscribe to see how I fought back when my own family tried to make me homeless. The Wilson family home stood on Maple Street in suburban Boston for over a century. A grand Victorian with gingerbread trim, wraparound porch, and a garden my grandfather had planted decades ago. The creaky third step on the staircase, the stained glass window that cast rainbow shadows in the hallway each morning, these weren't just features of a house. They were the physical embodiments of my childhood, my history, my sense of belonging. After my divorce from Brian 2 years ago, I moved back home. The legal fees had drained my savings, and as a freelance graphic designer, my income fluctuated too much for Boston's rental market. My parents, Michael and Patricia Wilson, welcomed me with open arms, or so I thought. "Stay as long as you need, honey," Mom had said, squeezing my hand across the kitchen table. "This house has always been your home." My parents were both retired teachers. Dad taught high school history for 35 years and Mom kindergarten for 28. They lived modestly on their pensions, occasionally dipping into savings for small luxuries like their annual trip to Cape Cod. At 65 and 63, they were slowing down. Dad's heart condition required medication and monitoring. Mom's arthritis made housework increasingly difficult. I naturally stepped in, handling grocery shopping, cooking most meals, driving them to doctor appointments, and maintaining the house. Then there was my sister Lauren, for years my senior at 32. The golden child. The successful one. Harvard Law School graduate and now a corporate attorney for an international firm based in London. She'd been living abroad for 5 years, coming home only for Christmas and the occasional flying visit. Always arriving with expensive gifts, stories of important clients, and subtle reminders of how well she was doing. The contrast between us couldn't be more stark. Lauren with her tailored suits and strategic career moves. Me with my creative projects, irregular hours, and passion for work that rarely translated into financial stability. "When will you get a real job?" became Lauren's standard greeting whenever we spoke on the phone. Our parents never said it outright, but their pride in Lauren was evident in the framed newspaper clipping about her firm's major court victory, prominently displayed in the living room. My design awards and freelance accomplishments for major clients somehow never made it to the wall. Growing up, Lauren dominated family decisions. Her opinion on everything from vacation destinations to what brand of coffee to buy somehow carried more weight than mine. This dynamic hadn't changed with adulthood. If anything, her physical distance seemed to increase her influence. Mom and Dad consulted her on financial decisions, home repairs, even their medical treatments, despite my being the one actually present and involved in their daily lives. Last month, Dad had a health scare, irregular heartbeat that sent us to the emergency room at midnight. I stayed with him through the night while Mom, exhausted, dozed in the waiting room chair. The doctors adjusted his medication, and he stabilized, but the incident shook us all. After that, I took on even more responsibilities, organizing his pills, preparing heart-healthy meals, and researching specialists. 2 weeks ago, Mom mentioned updating their will. "We should talk about the house," she said casually one morning as I fixed Dad's breakfast. "Lauren thinks we need to be clear about inheritance to avoid problems later." I nodded, not thinking much of it. "Sure, whatever makes things easier for you guys." The house had always been a given in family discussions. It would pass to both daughters equally someday. At least, that's what I understood from conversations over the years. The property had been in Dad's family for generations. His father had specifically bought out his own siblings' shares to keep it intact, wanting future Wilsons to enjoy the legacy. Sunday dinners were our tradition. I cooked most weeks now, giving Mom a break from kitchen duties. We'd gather at the antique oak table that had hosted Wilson family meals since the 1940s. This particular Sunday seemed no different as I prepared roast beef, Dad's favorite. I even made Yorkshire puddings from scratch, following Grandma Wilson's recipe. Little did I know that this dinner would change everything, that beneath the routine of passing dishes and pouring water, a plan had been set in motion that would challenge not just my living situation, but my very place in the family. As I set the table with the good china, something I did when we had guests, though Lauren hardly qualified as a guest in my mind, I noticed Mom seemed nervous, rearranging the silverware I'd already aligned perfectly. Dad was quieter than usual, engrossed in his tablet instead of helping as he normally would. "Is everything okay?" I asked, touching Mom's shoulder as she fussed with the napkins for the third time. "Of course, dear," she replied too quickly. "Just want everything nice for when Lauren arrives." I should have recognized the warning signs, the extra care with table settings, the tension in Mom's shoulders, Dad's unusual withdrawal. But I was focused on making a perfect meal, perhaps subconsciously still trying to prove my worth in comparison to my sister's achievements. The doorbell rang at exactly 5 p.m. Lauren was nothing if not punctual. The doorbell's chime sent Mom scurrying to answer, smoothing her dress as if greeting royalty instead of her daughter. I remained in the kitchen, checking the roast one final time. The meat thermometer read perfect medium rare, just how Dad liked it. The Yorkshire puddings had risen magnificently, golden and hollow in the center. I'd even made a red wine reduction sauce from scratch. This meal represented hours of preparation, my way of nurturing my family. "Amanda." Lauren's voice called from the entryway, that particular tone she used that somehow made my name sound like an afterthought. "Come say hello." I wiped my hands on a dishcloth and plastered on a smile before walking to the foyer. Lauren stood there, immaculate as always in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than I earned in a month. Her ash blonde hair was styled in a sleek bob, not a strand out of place despite her transatlantic flight. "Surprise," she exclaimed, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Bet you didn't expect to see me until Christmas." "What a nice surprise," I lied, accepting her brief embrace. The scent of her expensive perfume lingered as she pulled away. "How long are you staying?" "Oh, just a week," Lauren replied, handing Dad a gift bag. "I brought you that single malt you loved when you visited me last year." Dad's face lit up as he peeked inside. "The Macallan?" "Lauren, you shouldn't have." "And for you, Mom," Lauren continued, presenting a small box wrapped in silver paper. "Those earrings you admired in the Liberty catalog." Mom gasped when she opened them, immediately removing her simple pearl studs to try on Lauren's gift. "They're beautiful, darling." "Thank you." I stood awkwardly, empty-handed except for the dish towel I'd forgotten I was still holding. Lauren hadn't brought anything for me, not that I expected it. Her eyes swept over me, taking in my jeans and casual sweater. I suddenly felt underdressed in my own home. "Something smells amazing," she said, moving toward the dining room. "I'm starving after that flight." As we took our seats at the table, I noticed Mom had placed Lauren at the head, Dad's usual spot. He didn't comment, taking the chair to her right instead. I served the meal, describing each dish with a touch of pride. "Yorkshire pudding from scratch?" "Ambitious," Lauren commented, cutting into hers. "Though I had the most incredible ones at this gastropub in Notting Hill last month. The chef trained under Gordon Ramsay." And just like that, my culinary achievement was diminished. The familiar pattern reasserted itself. Whatever I did, Lauren had experienced better. The first 15 minutes of dinner proceeded with Lauren dominating the conversation, updating our parents on her recent legal victory for a major client and the subsequent bonus. Mom and Dad listened raptly, asking questions that gave her further opportunity to elaborate on her success. Not once did they ask about my recent project for a major tech company or the design award nomination I'd mentioned last week. I noticed something odd, though. Beneath the attentive questions, Mom seemed jumpy, dropping her fork twice. Dad kept glancing at Lauren as if waiting for a cue. There was a current of tension beneath the conversation that I couldn't identify. After serving dessert, A homemade apple crumble with cinnamon ice cream. I caught Mom and Lauren exchanging a look. Dad suddenly became very interested in his dessert, avoiding eye contact with everyone. So Lauren said, setting down her spoon and folding her hands on the table, "I think it's time we discuss the reason for my visit." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I looked between my family members, suddenly feeling like the only person not privy to a secret. "Amanda," Lauren continued, her voice taking on the tone she probably used in corporate negotiations. "As you know, Mom and Dad aren't getting any younger." "Of course," I replied cautiously. "That's why I've been living here, helping out." Lauren smiled thinly. "Yes, and that was a temporary arrangement, wasn't it? After your divorce." "It's been 2 years now." "I don't see how that's relevant," I said, feeling defensive. "I contribute to the household expenses, and I take care of." "The point is," Lauren interrupted, "Mom and Dad need to think about their future. Healthcare costs are rising, and their fixed income isn't going to be enough, especially if Dad needs additional care." Dad studied his dessert plate, not contradicting her. Mom twisted her napkin in her lap. "I've been working with their financial advisor," Lauren continued. "The best solution is to liquidate their largest asset, this house." My stomach dropped. "Liquidate? You mean sell our family home?" "It's the sensible option," Lauren stated as if discussing a business transaction rather than our heritage. "They can downsize to a nice condo in that new senior community in Brookline. No maintenance, on-site healthcare options, and the proceeds from this house would secure their retirement." I turned to my parents. "Is this what you want?" Before they could answer, Lauren slid a document across the table toward me. "I've already set everything in motion. The house is going on the market next week." I stared at the paper, not comprehending. "But this is our family home. Grandfather Wilson wanted it to stay in the family." "Sentimentality is a luxury they can't afford," Lauren said dismissively. "Besides, I've already transferred the deed into my name." "You've what?" I gasped. That's when she said it, with a small smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "You have 3 days to leave the house." The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked to Mom and Dad, waiting for them to object, to explain that this was some kind of terrible joke. But Mom stared at her lap, and Dad examined his water glass as if it contained ancient secrets. "You can't be serious," I finally managed. "Mom? Dad? You're okay with this?" "We tried to tell her to give you more time," Mom whispered, still not meeting my eyes. "More time?" I echoed incredulously. "The issue isn't time. This is our family home. And I live here too." "The arrangements were made months ago," Lauren said coolly. "Mom and Dad signed the papers transferring ownership to me. It's all perfectly legal." I grabbed the document she'd slid across the table and scanned it, my hands shaking. There it was in black and white. My parents had transferred ownership of the house to Lauren for the sum of $1. The date on the paper was from 3 months ago. "You've been planning this for months?" I looked up at my sister, then to my parents. "Behind my back?" "It's a business decision," Lauren replied. "Nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're kicking me out of my home. How is that not personal?" "You're 28, Amanda," Lauren said with exaggerated patience. "It's time you stood on your own 2 feet instead of living with Mom and Dad." "I am standing on my own feet. I'm here taking care of them while you're off in London doing God knows what." Lauren's expression hardened. "What I'm doing is making enough money to secure their future. What are you doing besides mooching off them and playing with your little design projects?" The cruelty of her words stung like a slap. I looked to Dad, desperately seeking intervention, support, anything. "Dad, please. Say something." He cleared his throat, still not meeting my eyes. "Lauren has our best interests at heart, Amanda. The financial plan makes sense." "And throwing me out makes sense too?" I asked, tears threatening. No one answered. The silence was confirmation enough. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Excuse me," I managed to say before fleeing the dining room, leaving my carefully prepared meal half-eaten on the table. Behind me, I heard Mom's soft "Amanda, wait," but it was Lauren's voice that carried down the hallway. "She'll get over it. She always does." As I rushed up the stairs to my bedroom, apparently no longer my bedroom, I realized that the betrayal wasn't just Lauren's. It was my parents' silent complicity that cut the deepest. I slammed my bedroom door, my hands trembling so badly I could barely turn the lock. My breath came in gasps as I collapsed onto my bed, the same twin bed with the lavender comforter I'd had since high school. The room around me, once a sanctuary, now felt like borrowed space. 3 days. 72 hours to pack up my life and find somewhere to go. The impossibility of it crushed my chest like a weight. Through the thin walls, I could hear the murmur of conversation continuing downstairs. They were still eating the dessert I'd made, discussing my eviction over cinnamon ice cream. The casual cruelty of it brought fresh tears. My gaze fell on the photographs lining my dresser: family vacation at Lake Winnipesaukee when I was 10, my college graduation with Mom and Dad flanking me proudly, last Christmas with all 4 of us in matching sweaters, Lauren's idea for the perfect holiday card. Happy faces, perfect smiles. Lies, all of it. I grabbed the Christmas photo and hurled it across the room. The frame hit the wall and the glass shattered, a satisfying explosion of destruction that matched my inner turmoil. Memories flooded unbidden. Dad teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway. Mom and I baking cookies in the kitchen during thunderstorms to distract me from my fear. Climbing the massive oak tree in the backyard with Lauren when we were kids, before competition replaced companionship. This house wasn't just walls and a roof, it was the physical space that contained my entire history. I don't know how long I sat there, cycling through shock, grief, and rage. The sky outside my window darkened from twilight to full night. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from my friend Jill, our usual Sunday night check-in, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. A soft knock on my door startled me from my daze. "Amanda?" Mom's voice, hesitant. "Can we talk?" I considered ignoring her, but eventually unlocked the door. Mom stood in the hallway, her face drawn with what looked like guilt. At least she had the decency to feel bad about ambushing me. "May I come in?" she asked, as if she were the visitor now. I stepped aside wordlessly. She entered and perched awkwardly on the edge of my desk chair while I resumed my position on the bed, arms crossed defensively. "I know this is a shock," she began. "A shock," I repeated incredulously. "Mom, you and Dad signed away our family home without even telling me, then sat there while Lauren told me I have to leave. Shock doesn't begin to cover it." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "We should have told you sooner. That's on us." "Why?" I demanded. "Just why? This house has been in our family for generations. Grandfather Wilson specifically wanted it to stay with the family." Mom sighed heavily. "Things are more complicated than you know. Your father's medical bills have been piling up. The pension only stretches so far. I could have helped more financially if you'd told me. I've been contributing what I can, but—" "Lauren has a better financial plan for our future," Mom interrupted, echoing Lauren's corporate speak. "The house is worth over $1 million now with the neighborhood development. That money could support us for the rest of our lives. So you're choosing money over family legacy? Over me?" Mom looked pained. "It's not about choosing. It's about being practical. Practical would have been discussing this as a family, Mom. Not sneaking around behind my back for months. Lauren thought it would be easier this way." "Easier for who? For Lauren? Since when does she make all the decisions for this family?" Mom had no answer for that. "Does Dad even want to leave this house?" I pressed. "Or is he just going along with whatever Lauren says, like always?" "You should talk to your father about that," Mom replied, avoiding my eyes. I tried. He won't even look at me. He sat there staring at his water glass, while Lauren told me I have 3 days to get out. Mom stood up, clearly uncomfortable with my anger. "It's late. We can discuss this more tomorrow when everyone's calmer." "Fine," I said flatly. "But answer me one thing honestly. Whose idea was this really? Yours and Dad's, or Lauren's?" Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "Good night, Amanda," she said softly, slipping out the door. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lauren smirk, heard her cold voice, "You have 3 days to leave the house." I replayed the dinner scene over and over, searching for clues I might have missed, warnings I should have heeded. Around 3 a.m., I crept downstairs for water. The house was silent except for the familiar creaks and sighs of old wood settling. In the living room, I noticed Dad's study door ajar, a slice of light visible. Curious, I approached. Dad sat at his desk, head in his hands, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He didn't notice me watching from the doorway. On his desk lay an open folder of documents, property papers from what I could glimpse. I cleared my throat softly. He startled, quickly gathering the papers. "Amanda, you should be sleeping," he said, his voice rough. "So should you," I replied. "Your heart, remember?" He nodded absently, still not meeting my eyes. "Just going over some things." I leaned against the doorframe. "Dad, what's really going on? This isn't just about money for retirement, is it?" He sighed deeply, finally looking up at me. "It's complicated, Amanda. Sometimes parents make decisions to protect their children, even when those decisions are difficult." "Protect us from what?" "Dad, please, just tell me the truth." He seemed on the verge of saying more, but then shook his head. "It's between you and Lauren now. I can't get in the middle." The dismissal stung. "You already are in the middle, Dad. You signed the house over to her." "It seemed like the best solution at the time," he said weakly. "Solution to what problem?" I demanded. But he just repeated, "Talk to Lauren," and turned back to his papers, effectively ending our conversation. The next morning, I found a property development brochure on the kitchen counter. "Wilson Heights, luxury condominiums coming soon," splashed across the cover, with an architectural rendering of modern apartments where our house and the neighboring properties currently stood. The developer's logo looked vaguely familiar. My stomach dropped as realization dawned. Lauren wasn't just selling our house, she was selling it to developers who would tear it down. Our family home, with all its history and memories, would be demolished to make way for luxury condos. I was still staring at the brochure when Lauren breezed into the kitchen in silk pajamas, heading straight for the coffee maker. "Morning," she said casually, as if she hadn't destroyed my world the night before. "Sleep well." I held up the brochure. "Wilson Heights? Really, Lauren? You're not just selling the house, you're having it demolished." She shrugged, pouring coffee into a mug. "The land is worth more than the structure. It's simple economics. It's our family home." I exploded. Grandfather's garden, the stained glass window from great-grandmother Wilson, the growth marks on the kitchen door frame, all of it just bulldozed for simple economics? Don't be melodramatic, Amanda. It's a house, not a person. Does Dad know about this part of your financial plan? That his childhood home will be razed to the ground. Lauren's expression flickered briefly. They know what they need to know. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to my friend Jill's messages from the night before. "Can I crash with you for a while?" I texted. "Family emergency. We'll explain later." Her reply came seconds later. "Of course. Everything okay?" Nothing was okay. My family had betrayed me. My home was being sold out from under me, and apparently I had less than 72 hours to figure out my next move. I looked up from my phone to find Lauren watching me with something almost like pity. "It's for the best, Amanda," she said, her voice gentler than before. "You need to build your own life instead of clinging to Mom and Dad." "I'm not clinging," I retorted. "I'm helping them. Something you'd know nothing about from your fancy life in London." Her eyes hardened again. "My fancy life is paying for their retirement. What are your little art projects contributing to their future?" I had no answer that would satisfy her corporate mindset, where value was measured only in dollars and cents, not in care and presence and love. As I trudged back upstairs to start the impossible task of packing up my life, one thought crystallized through the fog of betrayal and hurt: I wasn't going to leave without a fight. After a sleepless night cycling through grief, rage, and disbelief, I woke with newfound determination. If Lauren wanted to play hardball, I could too. Before accepting defeat, I needed answers, real ones, not the evasive half-truths my parents offered. My first stop, the county records office. If Lauren had legally transferred the house into her name, there would be documentation. I dressed quickly, skipping breakfast to avoid another confrontation, and slipped out while the rest of the house was still quiet. The records office was housed in a bland government building downtown. The clerk, a middle-aged woman named Marlene with cat-eye glasses and an impressive beehive hairdo, seemed surprised by my urgency. "Property records for 47 Maple Street," I requested, trying to keep my voice steady. "The Wilson residence." Marlene typed with agonizing slowness. "Wilson. Wilson. Ah, here we are." "Interesting," she murmured, squinting at her screen. "What's interesting?" I asked, leaning forward. "Well, according to this, the property was indeed transferred from Michael and Patricia Wilson to Lauren Wilson 3 months ago. But..." She frowned, clicking through more screens. "There's a notation here referencing an earlier document. Something about a restricted covenant from 1952. My heart skipped. "Can you find that document?" "It'll be in the archives," Marlene said. "Physical copy only for something that old. Give me a few minutes." Those minutes stretched like hours as I paced the dingy waiting area. Finally, Marlene returned with a yellowed folder. "Here it is," she said, opening it carefully on the counter. "Deed restriction filed by Edward Wilson in 1952. My grandfather." I leaned closer, struggling to decipher the legal jargon. Marlene, apparently enjoying the drama, summarized for me. "Your grandfather placed a covenant on the property when he bought out his siblings. It states that the house must remain in the Wilson family and cannot be sold to outside parties unless all direct descendants agree to the sale." My breath caught. "All direct descendants? As in, both Lauren and me?" Marlene nodded. "According to this, yes. Both of Edward Wilson's grandchildren would need to consent to any sale outside the family. So Lauren can't sell the house without my agreement?" Hope bloomed in my chest. "Not legally, no," Marlene confirmed. "Though I'm not a lawyer, mind you." I requested copies of everything, my hands shaking with excitement as I paid the fee. This was it, the loophole I needed. My next stop was unexpected: Harrison and Associates Law Office. Mr. Harrison had been our family attorney for decades. If anyone knew the full story, it would be him. The receptionist tried to turn me away. "Mr. Harrison is very busy today," but I refused to leave. After 30 minutes of stubborn waiting, the elderly lawyer finally appeared. "Amanda Wilson," he said, not sounding entirely pleased to see me. "I suppose you're here about the house. You know about that?" I asked, following him into his office. "I advised your parents against it," he admitted, settling behind his desk. "But they were quite influenced by your sister's arguments." "What arguments exactly?" "Everyone keeps talking about financial planning, but something doesn't add up." Mr. Harrison removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. "I shouldn't be discussing this with you." I placed the records office documents on his desk. "I found grandfather's covenant. Lauren can't sell the house without my consent." His eyebrows rose as he examined the papers. "I wasn't aware of this restriction." "Your sister certainly didn't mention it." "I don't think she knows," I said. "But that's not all that she's hiding, is it?" Mr. Harrison's silence was telling. "Please," I urged. "This is my home we're talking about. I deserve to know the truth." After a long moment, he sighed. "Your sister isn't in the financial position she portrays." "What do you mean?" "Lauren made some unfortunate investment decisions last year. Lost quite a substantial amount of money." I blinked, struggling to reconcile this with my sister's designer clothes and expensive gifts. "How substantial?" "Enough that she needed to liquidate assets quickly. When your parents mentioned updating their will, she saw an opportunity. The pieces began falling into place." "So this was never about securing their retirement?" "It was about bailing Lauren out of financial trouble." "I've said too much already," Mr. Harrison demurred, but his expression confirmed my suspicion. Armed with this knowledge, I made one more stop before heading home: the city planning office. The development brochure I'd found needed further investigation. The planning officer was surprisingly forthcoming once I explained I was a Wilson from 47 Maple Street. "Oh yes, the Victorian on the corner. Beautiful property. Shame about the development plans." "What can you tell me about the developer?" I asked. "North Star Development," she replied, pulling up files on her computer. They've submitted preliminary plans for Wilson Heights, 24 luxury condos where your block currently stands. They've already acquired 3 of the neighboring properties. And who owns North Star Development? She checked her records. Primary stakeholder is listed as Mitchell Holdings Incorporated. The name struck a chord. Mitchell as in James Mitchell? I believe so, she confirmed. James Mitchell. Lauren's boyfriend of the past year, whom she'd mentioned was in real estate. The connection was undeniable. I thanked the planning officer and left with copies of the development application. Outside, I called Jill. You're not going to believe what I found out, I began, the words tumbling out as I explained everything: the covenant, Lauren's financial troubles, the boyfriend's development company. That's seriously messed up, Jill said when I finished. What are you going to do? Stop her, I replied simply. But I need to know more. Can you do some digging into North Star Development and James Mitchell? Your research skills are better than mine. On it, Jill promised. What about tonight? Still need a place to stay. I thought about the covenant document safely tucked in my bag. No, I'm not going anywhere, not yet. I need to confront Lauren with what I know. Before heading home, I made one final stop at the local neighborhood association. Mrs. Petrovich, who'd lived on our street for 50 years, was the president and a formidable advocate for preserving the neighborhood's historic character. Amanda, come in, dear, she greeted me warmly. Her small living room was crammed with books and framed photographs of the neighborhood through the decades. I explained the situation as concisely as I could. Mrs. Petrovich's expression darkened with each revelation. Those developers have been trying to get their hands on this block for years, she said angrily. Your grandfather and I fought them off back in the 80s. I never thought they'd come through the back door like this. Through my sister, I added bitterly. The association will support you, Mrs. Petrovich declared. We've been documenting the historical significance of these homes for a preservation application. Your house is one of the most important. It was a station on the Underground Railroad, you know. I hadn't known. Another piece of family history Lauren was willing to bulldoze. Mrs. Petrovich provided me with copies of the historical documentation and promised to rally the neighbors. We'll fight this together, dear. By the time I returned home, it was late afternoon. Lauren's rental car was gone, out with the boyfriend/developer, I presumed. Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner, looking surprised to see me. Amanda, where have you been all day? We were worried. Were you? I asked coolly, setting my bag of documents on the counter. I've been learning some interesting things about our house. And about Lauren. Mom's hands stilled. What things? Did you know Grandfather Wilson put a legal covenant on this house? It can't be sold outside the family without both Lauren's and my consent. The color drained from Mom's face. We didn't. Or that Lauren's boyfriend is the developer who wants to tear down our home for condos. Or that Lauren lost a bunch of money and needs this deal to bail herself out. That can't be right, Mom protested weakly, but I could see doubt creeping into her expression. It is right, Mom. I have the documents to prove it. I pulled out the folder from the records office. Lauren's been lying to you. This was never about securing your retirement. It was about saving herself. Mom sank into a chair, looking suddenly older and very tired. Your father should hear this too. As if on cue, Dad appeared in the doorway. Hear what? I laid out everything I'd discovered, showing them the covenant, the development plans, the connection to Lauren's boyfriend. With each revelation, my parents' expressions shifted from disbelief to dismay. We had no idea, Dad said finally, his voice hollow. Lauren said this was the best option for everyone. That you'd be fine, that you needed the push to be independent. And you believed her without even talking to me? The hurt resurfaced, sharp and fresh. She was so convincing, Mom said softly. She had spreadsheets, projections, and you know how your father and I are with finances. Where is Lauren now? I asked. Meeting James for dinner, Dad replied. She said they had business to discuss. I bet they do, I muttered. Well, they're in for a surprise. I'm not signing any consent for the sale, and without that, their development plans are dead in the water. Mom reached for my hand across the table. Amanda, we're so sorry. We should have discussed this with you from the beginning. The apology soothed some of the raw hurt, but not all of it. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. We need to confront Lauren together, I said firmly. All of us. No more letting her manipulate this family. My parents exchanged glances, a silent communication born of decades together. Finally, Dad nodded. You're right. This ends now. As we waited for Lauren's return, I felt a strange calm settling over me. The battle wasn't over, but at least now I was armed with the truth, and I wasn't fighting alone. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 8 as headlights swept across the living room curtains. Lauren was back. My pulse quickened, but I remained seated at the dining room table between my parents. The damning documents spread before us like battle plans. We heard the front door open, Lauren's voice calling out cheerfully, "I'm back. And I brought dessert." Then a man's deeper voice, "I hope everyone likes tiramisu." James Mitchell had joined her. Perfect. The mastermind behind the development scheme could face us too. Lauren appeared in the dining room doorway, holding a bakery box, and froze at the sight of our impromptu family meeting. James, tall and polished in an expensive suit, nearly bumped into her from behind. "What's going on?" Lauren asked, her eyes darting from our serious faces to the papers on the table. "We need to talk," Dad said, his voice firmer than I'd heard in years. "All of us." Lauren's professional mask slipped into place. "Can it wait? James and I had a long day of meetings." "I'm sure you did," I replied coldly. "Planning Wilson Heights must be exhausting work." Her eyes widened slightly, the only indication that my words had hit their mark. James stepped forward, extending his hand to my father. "Mr. Wilson, we haven't been formally introduced." "James Mitchell." Dad ignored the outstretched hand. "I know who you are. What I don't know is why you're planning to develop condominiums on my property when it hasn't even been sold to you yet." James's smile faltered. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Lauren assured me. "Lauren assured you of a lot of things, I'm sure," I interrupted, standing up. "Including that she had the legal right to sell this property." "She doesn't." I held up the covenant document. "Grandfather Wilson made sure of that in 1952. This house cannot be sold outside the family without consent from all direct descendants, which includes me." Lauren set the dessert box down with controlled precision. "Where did you get that?" "County Records Office. Public information." I also stopped by City Planning, the Neighborhood Association, and Mr. Harrison's office. "I've had a very educational day." Lauren's composure cracked slightly. "You had no right to go behind my back. That's rich coming from you." I exploded. "You've been planning this for months. Lying to Mom and Dad about their finances, hiding your investment losses, using your boyfriend's development company to tear down our family home." James shifted uncomfortably. "Lauren, you told me your family was fully on board." "They are," she insisted. "Amanda is just being difficult, as usual." "Difficult?" I repeated incredulously. "You're trying to make me homeless while bulldozing our heritage for profit." Mom stood up, her voice quavering but determined. "Lauren, did you lose money in investments last year? Is that what this is really about?" The direct question seemed to throw Lauren off balance. She glanced at James, who was watching her with growing suspicion. "That's not relevant," she hedged. "It's entirely relevant," Dad countered. "You told us this plan was for our financial security. If you were actually trying to solve your own problems at our expense." "At all of our expense," I added. Lauren's facade finally cracked. "Fine. Yes, I had some investment setbacks. But this plan still benefits everyone. Mom and Dad get retirement security, the neighborhood gets upgraded, and yes, I recoup some losses. What's so wrong with a solution that works for everyone?" "Except it doesn't work for me," I pointed out. "Or for the house that's been in our family for generations. Or for the neighbors who don't want their historic community demolished." James cleared his throat. "I think I should leave. We clearly need to reassess this project." His retreat was swift and cowardly, leaving Lauren to face us alone. As the front door closed behind him, Lauren rounded on me. "Do you have any idea what you've done? That deal was worth millions." "To who? To you? To your boyfriend's company? Certainly not to our family." "Don't be naive, Amanda. Sentimentality doesn't pay bills." Mom and Dad need financial security more than they need an old house straining their resources. Stop using them as your excuse. I shouted. This was never about their needs, it was about yours. Lauren's face flushed with anger. You have no idea what my life is like. The pressure, the expectations. Oh, spare me the privileged whining. While you've been playing corporate hotshot in London, I've been here, actually taking care of Mom and Dad. Taking care of them? You've been mooching off them since your divorce. That's enough, both of you. Dad interjected, rising from his chair only to suddenly grab his chest, his face contorting in pain. Dad? The argument forgotten, Lauren and I both rushed to him as he slumped back into his seat. Michael, Mom cried, reaching for the emergency pill bottle he kept in his pocket. I'm calling 911, I said, already dialing. The next hour passed in a blur of paramedics, sirens, and the sterile corridors of Boston General Hospital. Dad had suffered what the doctor called a mild cardiac event, not a full heart attack, but a serious warning sign exacerbated by stress. In the waiting room, Mom sat between Lauren and me, the three of us forming an uneasy truce in the face of greater concerns. The artificial lights cast harsh shadows, making everyone look sickly and exhausted. This is your fault, Lauren muttered after Mom stepped away to speak with the doctor. If you hadn't stirred everything up. My fault. I hissed back. You're the one who created this whole situation with your lies. I was trying to fix things before it was too late. Dad's medical bills are mounting, the house needs expensive repairs, and their pension barely covers the property taxes. Then we could have discussed it as a family, found a solution together. Not this underhanded scheme that benefits your boyfriend's company. Lauren fell silent, her expression unreadable. After a moment, she said quietly, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Lauren? You ambush me at dinner, give me 3 days to pack up my life, and I just meekly comply while you tear down our home. I thought. She hesitated. I thought you'd be relieved, honestly. To have an excuse to move on, build your own life. The statement was so disconnected from reality that I could only stare at her. You really don't know me at all, do you? Before she could respond, Mom returned, her face drawn with worry. They're keeping him overnight for observation. We can see him for a few minutes. Dad looked small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping softly around him. His color was better, but the fear in his eyes was new and disturbing. I'm sorry, he said as we gathered around his bed. I didn't mean to scare everyone. Don't apologize, Mom soothed, taking his hand. Just rest. No, Dad insisted, his voice stronger. I need to say this. I've been a coward, letting things happen instead of standing up for what's right. He looked directly at Lauren. Your grandfather would be ashamed of what we've done. This house scheme, it's wrong. I knew it was wrong when I signed those papers. Lauren's confident demeanor crumbled slightly. Dad, I was just trying to help. By going behind everyone's back? By treating your sister like she doesn't matter. He shook his head. That's not how Wilsons behave. The doctor says you need to avoid stress, Lauren countered, deflecting. We can discuss this when you're better. No more delays, Dad said firmly. Amanda found the covenant. The house stays in the family unless you both agree otherwise. So you two need to figure this out, together. But not here, not now. The nurse appeared, signaling the end of our visit. As we prepared to leave, Dad caught my hand. I'm sorry, Amanda. I should have stood up for you at that dinner. The simple acknowledgement loosened something tight in my chest. It's okay, Dad. Just get better. In the hospital parking lot, Lauren and I faced each other awkwardly. The anger remained, but Dad's condition had tempered it with perspective. I'm staying at the house tonight, I stated, not a question but a declaration. Lauren nodded stiffly. Fine. We'll talk tomorrow. As I drove home alone, Mom staying overnight at the hospital, I realized the confrontation had changed everything. The truth was out, Dad had finally taken a stand, and Lauren's perfect plan was unraveling. But the battle wasn't over. Lauren wasn't someone who gave up easily, and there was still the question of what would happen to our family home, and to the family itself. The morning after Dad's hospitalization dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I prepared for what would undoubtedly be a difficult day. I'd spent half the night researching alternatives to Lauren's development scheme, determined to present a viable counterproposal. Mom called around 8 a.m. to report that Dad was stable and would likely be discharged the following day. "He's already complaining about the hospital food," she said, which I took as a positive sign. "I'll handle things here," I promised. "Try not to worry." Easier said than done. By 9 a.m., I was seated at the dining room table with my laptop, financial spreadsheets, and a half-drunk cup of coffee when Lauren appeared, looking impeccably put together despite the family crisis. "We need to talk," she said, pouring herself coffee. "Yes, we do," I agreed, gesturing to the chair across from me. "But first, I'm meeting with the neighborhood association in an hour. You should come." Lauren frowned. "Why would I do that?" "Because they've documented the historical significance of this house. It might qualify for protected status, which would make your development plans impossible regardless of who owns it." She sat down heavily. "You really won't let this go, will you?" "It's our family home, Lauren." "Of course I won't let it go." A car horn sounded outside, my ride to the meeting. Lauren sighed, then grabbed her purse. "Fine. I'll follow in my rental." The neighborhood association had convened an emergency meeting at the community center. About 30 residents filled the small room, their expressions hardening when Lauren walked in behind me. Mrs. Petrovich presided from a folding table at the front, surrounded by binders of historical documentation. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "As you know, we're facing a threat to the historical integrity of our neighborhood. North Star Development has submitted plans to demolish several properties, including the Wilson House, which has stood since 1890 and served as an underground railroad station." Lauren shifted uncomfortably beside me as neighbors turned to stare. Mrs. Petrovich continued, "Amanda Wilson has uncovered information suggesting the development plans may involve some irregular practices." "Amanda, would you like to explain?" I stood, conscious of all eyes on me. "My sister Lauren recently transferred ownership of our family home with the intention of selling to North Star Development for a condominium project. However, she wasn't aware of a covenant placed on the property by our grandfather, requiring consent from all descendants for any sale outside the family." Murmurs rippled through the room. I glanced at Lauren, whose professional mask was firmly in place, though I could see tension in her jaw. "Furthermore," I continued, "the proposed development would destroy not just our family home, but the historical character of this entire block. The Wilson House specifically has documented historical significance that should qualify it for protection." Mrs. Petrovich nodded vigorously. "We've already submitted an application for historical designation. If approved, none of these properties could be demolished." "This is absurd," Lauren interjected, standing beside me. "Private property owners have rights. You can't just arbitrarily block development because of sentimentality." An elderly man in the front row stood up, leaning on his cane. "My family has lived in this neighborhood for 4 generations, young lady. This isn't about sentimentality, it's about preserving our community's history and character." Others voiced their agreement, and Lauren found herself facing a united front of angry neighbors. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. As the meeting progressed, it became clear the community was overwhelmingly opposed to the development. They shared stories about the neighborhood's history, including details about our house I'd never known, how the unusual cellar design had hidden escaping slaves, how the distinctive ironwork on the porch had been crafted by a freed man who became a renowned blacksmith. By the end, even Lauren seemed affected by the passionate testimonials, though she maintained her composed exterior. Outside afterward, a local reporter approached us. "I'm from the Boston Chronicle. Would either of you care to comment on the development controversy?" Before Lauren could speak, I stepped forward. "This isn't just about one house or one family. It's about whether we value history and community over profit. The Wilson House has stood for over 130 years, sheltering generations and playing a role in the Underground Railroad. Should that legacy be bulldozed for luxury condos?" The reporter scribbled notes eagerly. "And you're fighting your own sister over this?" Lauren interrupted smoothly. We're working through a family disagreement about the best use of the property. No final decisions have been made. Back in the car, Lauren exploded. A newspaper story? Really, Amanda? You're determined to make me look like the villain here. You made yourself the villain when you tried to kick me out and demolish our home without even discussing it with me. We drove in tense silence back to the house. Once inside, Lauren paced the living room while I sat on the couch, both of us trying to cool down. Finally, Lauren spoke. This isn't just about the house for you, is it? I looked up, surprised by her perceptiveness. No, it's about family. About feeling like I matter in this family as much as you do. She sat across from me, her expression softening slightly. I never meant to make you feel that way. But you did. You and Mom and Dad made these huge decisions affecting my life without even consulting me. Like my opinions, my needs, my attachment to this house. None of it mattered. Lauren was quiet for a moment. I've always envied how easy everything seems for you, she said finally. I laughed incredulously. Easy? My marriage failed, my career barely pays the bills, and I just found out my entire family was plotting behind my back. But you're free, Lauren said, surprising me. You do work you love. You're not constantly trying to meet impossible expectations. The only impossible expectations are the ones you put on yourself, Lauren. She shook her head. You don't understand the pressure. The firms I work with, the clients, one mistake and it's over. And that justifies lying to Mom and Dad? Using them to solve your financial problems? I didn't think of it that way, she admitted. The development deal would have solved everything. Their retirement security, my investment losses, your need to become independent. Except you never asked what I needed, I pointed out. You just decided for me, like you always do. Before Lauren could respond, my phone rang. It was Mom calling from the hospital. I answered immediately, hearing the panic in her voice. Amanda, come quickly. Your father's had a setback. We raced to the hospital, all arguments temporarily forgotten. Dad had experienced chest pains again, requiring additional medication. He looked pale and tired when we were finally allowed to see him, but the doctor assured us he was stabilizing. I found something you should see, Dad said weakly, gesturing to the drawer beside his bed. Mom, show them. Mom retrieved a worn leather journal. Your father's been keeping this for years. He wanted you both to read certain parts. She opened to a marked page and handed it to me. It was dated 5 years earlier. My greatest regret is how we've let Lauren's force of personality overshadow Amanda's quieter strengths. Lauren blazes so brightly that we've failed to nurture Amanda's steady flame. Both my daughters are exceptional in different ways, but I fear we've never shown Amanda how much we value her unique gifts. The house should go to both of them equally. Lauren has the world, but Amanda has always been the heart of our home. Tears blurred my vision as I passed the journal to Lauren. Her hands trembled slightly as she read. There's more, Mom said, turning to another marked page from just 3 months ago. Lauren called about the house. Her plan makes financial sense on paper, but something feels wrong about it. She's so persuasive, so certain. Patricia is convinced. But what about Amanda? This is her home too. Lauren says Amanda will be fine, that she needs this push. Am I being a coward by not standing up to Lauren? By not insisting Amanda be included in these discussions? Lauren closed the journal, her composed facade finally crumbling. Dad, I never meant to. I thought I was helping. I know, Dad said gently. But help shouldn't hurt people you love. The raw honesty of the moment hung in the air between us. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, Lauren and I were seeing each other clearly, not as competitors or as the roles we'd been assigned in the family, but as sisters with different strengths and vulnerabilities. I need to show you something else, I said quietly, pulling out the alternative proposal I'd been working on. I think there's a way to save the house and provide for Mom and Dad's future. My plan was simple but practical. Convert part of the house into a rental apartment, apply for historic home tax credits, and use my design skills to create a virtual tour experience of the Underground Railroad history. The projected income, combined with my increased contribution and the tax benefits, would more than cover the property expenses and provide additional retirement funds. It's not millions, I acknowledged, but it preserves the house and gives Mom and Dad financial stability. Lauren studied the numbers with her usual intensity. The tax credits are substantial. I hadn't considered those. Because you were focused on the quick solution, not the right one, I said, but without malice. Dad reached for both our hands. This is what should have happened from the beginning. Both of you, working together, finding a solution that respects everyone's needs. Later, in the hospital cafeteria, Lauren and I sat across from each other with coffee and stale sandwiches. The emotional exhaustion of the past few days showed in the dark circles under her eyes, making her look more human, more like my sister rather than the corporate powerhouse who'd steamrolled over my life. I need to tell you something, she said, staring into her coffee. The investment losses were bad. Really bad. I was desperate. Bad enough to use our family home as a bailout? She winced. I'm on probation at the firm. One more mistake and I'm done. The development deal with James would have saved my career. Why didn't you just tell us the truth? We could have helped. Help isn't something I'm good at accepting, she admitted. And honestly, I was ashamed. The brilliant, successful Lauren Wilson, failing spectacularly. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand, the first genuine gesture of affection between us in years. You're still my sister, even when you're being a complete jerk. A surprised laugh escaped her. I deserved that. Yes, you did. But we're going to fix this, together. The next day, Dad was discharged with strict orders to avoid stress. We gathered in the living room of the house that had almost torn us apart, now the site of reconciliation. Lauren officially withdrew from the development deal, breaking things off with James in the process. He was more interested in the property than in me anyway, she admitted with surprising composure. Mr. Harrison was summoned to undo the property transfer, returning ownership to Mom and Dad with the provision that the house would eventually pass to both daughters equally, honoring Grandfather Wilson's original intention. The historical designation application proceeded with enthusiastic support from the community and local preservation societies. If approved, it would protect the house from future development schemes and potentially qualify U.S. for additional grants for restoration. Lauren would return to London, but with a promise to be more present in family decisions and to visit more regularly. And to actually listen to what you want, not just decide it for you, she added, looking directly at me. As for me, I would stay in the house, implementing my alternative plan with Lauren's unexpected support. She'd offered to help with the legal aspects of setting up the rental and historic tour business. It wasn't a perfect happy ending. There were still hurt feelings to heal, trust to rebuild, and practical challenges ahead. But sitting together in the family home that had weathered 130 years of Wilson family history, I felt something that had been missing for too long, the sense that I truly belonged here, not as an afterthought or a temporary resident, but as an equal, valued member of the family. The crisis that had nearly cost me my home had ultimately given me something more valuable, my rightful place in my family. 6 months after what we now jokingly called the Dinner of Doom, I stood in what used to be our detached garage, now transformed into a stylish little design studio. Large windows installed along the south wall flooded the space with natural light, perfect for my creative work. On the walls hung framed architectural drawings of the main house, part of the historical documentation project that had become my passion. The Wilson house had not only survived the threat of demolition, but was thriving in its new dual purpose. The third floor, once just storage and dusty spare rooms, had been converted into a charming 2-bedroom apartment now rented by a history professor from Boston University who appreciated the home's significance. The income covered the property taxes with money to spare for my parents' retirement fund. More importantly, the house had received its official historical designation 3 months earlier. The plaque beside the front door proudly declared it a protected historical property, recognizing its role in the Underground Railroad. Twice monthly, I conducted small guided tours for school groups and history enthusiasts, sharing the legacy that had almost been lost to luxury condominiums. My parents had decided against moving to a retirement community. Why would we leave? Mom had asked. This solution gives us financial security without giving up our home. Dad's health had improved significantly once the family stress diminished. His heart condition still required monitoring, but his color was good and his energy had returned. Most mornings, you could find him tending Grandfather Wilson's garden, preserving another piece of family heritage. The most surprising transformation, however, was in my relationship with Lauren. After returning to London, she'd called weekly instead of her previous monthly check-ins. Our conversations, once dominated by her achievements and subtle criticisms of my life choices, had evolved into genuine exchanges. She asked about my projects, offered actually helpful suggestions for the rental business, and occasionally even admitted her own struggles and doubts. 2 months ago, Lauren had shocked everyone by announcing she was leaving her prestigious law firm. "Life's too short for work that makes you miserable," she'd explained during a video call, looking both terrified and exhilarated by her decision. She'd accepted a position with a smaller firm specializing in historical preservation law, inspired, she admitted, by our battle to save the family home. Even more surprisingly, she'd rented an apartment just 20 minutes away from the Wilson house, returning from London permanently. "I missed too much being away," she'd said simply when she told us her plans. Today was Sunday, and we were reinstating the family dinner tradition, but with significant differences. No longer did Lauren sit at the head of the table by unspoken agreement. No longer did my contributions go unacknowledged. And no longer did important family discussions happen behind anyone's back. I was putting the finishing touches on dessert, apple crumble, still Dad's favorite, when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I called, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Opening the front door, I found Lauren balancing a bottle of wine and a small gift bag. "Hey," she said, looking more relaxed in jeans and a casual sweater than I'd seen her in years. "Sorry I'm late. Had to pick something up." I took the wine, admiring the label. "No more 3-day eviction notices with dinner?" I teased, our shared trauma now transformed into a family inside joke. Lauren winced dramatically. "Too soon, sis. Too soon." We both laughed as I ushered her inside. In the kitchen, she greeted Mom with a hug, then handed Dad the gift bag. "What's this?" he asked, looking surprised. "Open it," Lauren urged. Inside was a beautifully bound book titled The Wilson House, A History. Lauren had compiled all our research, photographs, and family stories into a proper historical record. "This is incredible," Dad said, voice thick with emotion as he carefully turned the pages. "Amanda did most of the research," Lauren acknowledged. "I just helped organize it and found a publisher who specializes in local histories." My sister, giving me credit? The world truly had changed. "This will be perfect for the tours," I said, genuinely touched by her thoughtfulness. As we settled around the dining table, me serving the meal I'd prepared while Lauren poured wine, the contrast with that fateful dinner 6 months ago couldn't have been more stark. Where tension and secret agendas had once poisoned the atmosphere, now there was authentic conversation and laughter. "Mrs. Petrovich stopped me yesterday," Mom mentioned as we ate. "She says the neighborhood association wants to nominate our house for a preservation award." "That's wonderful," I exclaimed. "Her support has been amazing through all of this." "The whole neighborhood rallied," Lauren acknowledged. "I was too focused on the financial aspects to see the community value." Dad raised his glass. "To neighbors who become like family, and family who learn to be better neighbors to each other." We clinked glasses, the simple toast carrying deeper meaning for all of us. After dinner, Lauren helped me with the dishes, another new development. As we worked side by side, she asked, "Have you met the guy who moved in next door? The architect working on the Thompson House restoration? Ryan?" "Yes, we've talked a few times. He's on the preservation committee." I tried to sound casual, but Lauren's knowing smile told me I'd failed. "Just talked, huh? That's why you're blushing." I flicked dishwater at her. "Stop it. We're just colleagues with similar interests." Lauren hummed skeptically. "He seems nice. Smart too. Since when do you play matchmaker?" I asked, amused by this new sisterly behavior. "Since I realized I've been too wrapped up in my own life to care about yours," she replied with unexpected candor. "I'm trying to do better." The simple admission touched me deeply. You are doing better. We both are. Later, I wandered out to the garden alone, seeking a moment of quiet reflection. The evening air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of the heritage roses grandfather Wilson had planted decades ago. I sat on the stone bench beneath the old oak tree, looking up at the house illuminated by warm light from within. 6 months ago, I'd nearly lost this place. Not just the physical structure, but my sense of belonging within my own family. The journey from that devastating dinner to today had been painful, but ultimately transformative. I'd discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed, spoken truths long left unsaid, and fought for what mattered most to me. More importantly, I'd learned that family relationships, like old houses, require regular maintenance and occasional major renovations. The foundation might be solid, but the connections between us needed constant attention and care to remain strong. Mind if I join you? Lauren's voice came from behind me. I patted the bench beside me. It's your garden too. She sat, both of us gazing at the house in comfortable silence for a moment. I never properly apologized, she said finally. For how I handled everything. For treating you like you didn't matter. You've shown your apology through actions, I replied. That means more than words. Still. I'm sorry, Amanda. Really sorry. I linked my arm through hers, a gesture of affection that would have felt impossible months ago. I know. I've forgiven you. Mostly. I added the last part with a small smile. Lauren laughed. Fair enough. The funny thing is, I mused, in trying to take away my home, you actually helped me find my voice. I never would have stood up to you, to any of you, before this happened. Silver linings from my terrible behavior? I'll take it, Lauren said wryly. From inside, we heard Mom calling us for dessert and coffee. As we walked back toward the house, arm in arm, I realized something profound. The true value of our family home wasn't in its walls, or its history, or even its market price. It was in the connections it fostered, the memories it sheltered, and the lessons it taught us about what really matters. The house had survived for 130 years, witnessing the best and worst of multiple generations of Wilsons. With proper care and respect for its history, it would stand for generations more, housing the continuing story of our imperfect but loving family. You know what still amazes me? I said as we reached the porch steps. What's that? That it took nearly losing everything to help us find a better way forward. Sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the most important growth. Lauren squeezed my hand. Just promise me one thing? What? Next time I'm being a controlling jerk, tell me directly. No need for another family crisis to make a point. I laughed, holding the door open for my sister. Deal. As we rejoined our parents for dessert in the dining room where our family drama had begun, I felt a profound sense of peace. The home that had almost divided us forever had ultimately brought us closer together, stronger and wiser than before. Have you ever had to fight for something that rightfully belonged to you? Or experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this family journey of betrayal and reconciliation resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more true stories of family challenges overcome. Remember, sometimes the most painful moments in our lives become the catalyst for our greatest growth. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to stand up for what matters most in your own life.